Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa on France 24. I'm Vedika Bahel and here's the top headlines from across the continent. We are not here to negotiate our survival, we're here to design the world's next climate economy. Strong words from Ethiopia's Prime Minister as the second Continental Climate Summit opened in Addis Ababa. He said Africa will no longer be a climate change victim, but a driver of solutions. A shake-up for Senegal's government amid growing public frustration over stalled reforms and economic woes. Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko has pledged the new cabinet will work tirelessly to revive public trust. We bring you the details from our correspondent on the ground. And move over Freddie Mercury because thanks to a South African youth choir, the iconic Bohemian Rhapsody has found a new voice in the Zulu language. It's the first time that Queen has ever authorised a translation of their famous anthem. Thank you for joining us. We start this bulletin in the Ethiopian capital, where 53 African heads of state gathered Monday to kick off the second edition of the Africa Climate Summit. Coming 2 years since the last meeting in Nairobi, this year sees a push from leaders to move from rhetoric to action. Many called for increased cooperation and more funding, as well as a focus on climate justice for Africa, which suffers disproportionately from the climate crisis, but attracts less than 2% of global green investments. Laurent Bashtika explains.
Kicking off the second African Climate Summit, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed immediately set the tone. The continent will no longer accept to remain a bystander of the global climate crisis.
We're not here to negotiate our survival. We're here to design the world's next climate economy. If we make the right choices now, Africa can be the first continent to industrialize without destroying its ecosystems.
Africa only contributes 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet the continent is among the most affected by the climate crisis. A vast majority of African countries are vulnerable to drought, flooding, and other extreme weather events, and lose between 2 and 5% of their yearly GDP to climate-related incidents. And while the continent is rife with economic opportunities, with the potential to produce up to 40% of renewable energies worldwide, it currently only attracts 1% of global green investments. The first African Climate Summit 2 years ago saw donors pledge some $23 billion in financing, but only a fraction of the funds have so far materialized.
Too often, commitments are broken and international solidarity is dismissed as weakness, precisely when the scale of climate crisis demands enhanced cooperation.
An ambitious call for climate justice, which could see African countries fulfill their potential as future leaders of the global energy transition.
Now, for more on that story, let's hear from our regional correspondent, Bastien Renouy.
We are not here to negotiate our survival, we are here to create the world's next climate economy. These are the words of Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed during the opening ceremony of the summit. He added that if we make the right decisions now, we can be the first continent to industrialize without destroying its ecosystem. These words resonate 2 years after the Nairobi Declaration. At that time, Kenyan President William Ruto said Africa should not be a victim of climate change, it should be a solution to climate change. So once again, African countries are gathering to decide on the continent's policies, development of green energy, creation of a comprehensive climate strategy, a call for the establishment of an international green tax to finance the strategy, as well as expansion of carbon credits. These initiatives are steps in the right direction, but so far it's difficult for Africa to convince global polluters, as the continent is still badly short of funding. It's receiving just 1% of global annual climate funding.
A government of commitment. Those were the words pledged by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko as Senegal reshuffled its cabinet this weekend. Sonko, who's kept his post, will lead a team of 25 ministers and 6 state secretaries under President Bassirou Diomaye Faye. There's been some rearrangement and some fresh faces as the government pledged to implement major state projects and tackle public mistrust. More with our correspondent, Aminatou Diallo.
This government reshuffle promises swift action in key sectors while seeking to restore voter confidence. With several changes made, the new lineup features Mohamedou Bamba as Minister of the Interior, formerly Ousmane Sonko's lawyer for several years. He notably defended him during the judicial battles that prevented Sonko from running in the presidential election in 2024. Déthié Fall, Sonko ally and former presidential candidate, now heads the newly created Ministry of Infrastructure. Cheikh Niang has stepped in as Minister of African Integration and Foreign Affairs, replacing Yassine Fall, who has become the Minister of Justice. Promising to hold his team to high standards, Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko said this will be a government of work and commitment. Several senior figures have left the government, including former Justice Minister Ousmane Diagne. His ministry faced criticism for slow judicial investigations into political violence that claimed dozens of lives between 2021 and 2024. The new government has set clear priorities. Justice is at the heart of the agenda to restore public confidence in the system, a key campaign promise. Fishing, a vital sector contributing about 3% of the national GDP, is also expected to receive stronger support. The new cabinet inherits the challenging task of implementing the state project amid economic difficulties, including the country's recent downgrade in international ratings.
Well, let's head to DR Congo now, where tensions are running high in Uvira, the second largest city in the province of South Kivu. A civil society group were demonstrating against General Olivier Gesita, a commander recently deployed to the area. They accuse him of supporting the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels. For the past week, Uvira has been the site of sporadic clashes between Congolese soldiers and militia members. Let's take a listen now to one of the organizers.
When the M23 was attacking us, some generals had surrendered the city of Bukavu to the enemy, to the M23. Among them was General Gesita, who was also one of the masterminds. To our surprise, we saw that he had also been assigned here in Uvira, and this had an effect on our demonstration.
And now let's take a brief look at other stories making headlines across the continent. In Nigeria, authorities say dozens of people were killed by Boko Haram militants in the country's northeast. The nighttime assault took place in a village that's home to residents who had recently returned from a camp for the internally displaced. Local government chairmen said over 100 people were forced to flee, with more than a dozen houses burnt in the attack. A West African affiliate of Al-Qaeda continues to step up efforts to disrupt Mali's economy, particularly to affect essential fuel imports entering the landlocked country. It comes as the group announced a blockade on parts of western Mali and have made several major attacks in a bid to weaken Mali's junta. The group is considered the deadliest in the region. And Ivory Coast barred two top opposition leaders Monday from running in the presidential race next month. When drawing up the final list of candidates, the Constitutional Council eliminated ex-president Laurent Gbagbo and former CEO of Credit Suisse, Tidjane Thiam, on the grounds that they've been removed from the electoral roll for different reasons. Both men were pushing to unseat 83-year-old incumbent President Alassane Ouattara, who's seeking a fourth term. Next, you've probably heard of the epic Queen anthem Bohemian Rhapsody, but have you ever heard it sung in Zulu? Well, one South African youth choir has translated the iconic song, even with its own music video to match. But despite having permission from Queen to cover the track, they won't be receiving any income from it. This as Zulu songs have soared in popularity abroad, but many African artists aren't claiming the royalties they're entitled to. This report's from our correspondents on the ground.
A cult classic with an African twist. Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, translated and performed in Zulu by the Inlovo Youth Choir.
It took us about a year and a half to get it right because we had to find the right words. Zulu or Venek words are very long, so we had to find words, different words that would give the same meaning as the English words.
The choir had already covered tunes by other famous artists like Lady Gaga, but they say adapting Freddie Mercury's song was the most difficult.
We had to be careful just to honor them. We wanted to give a beautiful tribute, but without changing anything.
However, there were some changes in the clicks and whistles characteristic of the Zulu language.
Yeah, there are some sounds that I'm making. It's like, you see, and then it's like there. Or when the song plays, it sounds so amazing.
Although they cannot commercialise their version, the group was granted permission from Queen to cover the song.
How it usually works is you should get permission before you do the translation. You send through a demo. What we did is we did the translation, we filmed the beautiful video, and then we were like, oops, we better get permission for this.
The choir will not receive any income from its Zulu cover, but it has permission to perform it during concerts. The annual Fame Festival in Cape Town helps musicians navigate the business and legal complexities of their creative profession.
Artists in general, they are not very good managers of their own products, which is sad because you have this natural talent or God-given talent, you need to know how to manage it.
International consumption of Zulu songs has doubled in the last 5 years, but more than 15 million euros worth of royalties remain unclaimed by artists unaware they are entitled to them in South Africa alone.
And finally, a rust-red blood moon was enjoyed by tourists and tribal dancers alike under the Kenyan stars. The country hosted its first ever astro-tourism experience to coincide with the rare phenomenon which occurs when the sun, earth and moon align, casting a shadow by the planet on its satellite and makes it appear a deep red colour. The astro-tourism push seeks to show off Kenya's clear and starry night skies, and tourists, locals and stargazing enthusiasts all gathered to witness the blood moon. And that concludes our programme. Thank you for watching today's edition of Eye on Africa, and stay tuned to France 24.